What's happening, everybody, and happy Sunday. This is Adi from Theros International, rolling solo today, here to chat about what we saw yesterday from Olympiacos against ARIS, a big win, and of course, a very important Champions League matchup coming up against PSV, which could very well determine the rest of the campaign for Champions League and whether or not we make it to the knockouts. But before we talk about all of that, before we talk about the result, don't forget, guys, to like and subscribe. Those of you that are tuning in now, a bunch of you are jumping in. Get into the comments when you roll solo. It's a lot easier to do this if I can see what you guys are saying and if you guys have commentary so that we can discuss and have a little bit of a chat. So go ahead. I hate to hear myself talk. Tell me where you're chiming in from and tell me what you think. Tell me what your opinions were on the game. We're going to get into everything in just a moment. And of course, those of you that don't already, please consider subscribing and help us continue to grow the red and white community. You can also support us on Patreon. Guys, we have 3 different tiers from $1 a month all the way up to $10 a month for a merchandise tier. Extra content for the patrons that are enhanced content tier right now. I do owe you guys 2 episodes. You will be getting those this month. A couple of interviews got postponed during October, so things were hectic with a lot of people's schedules, but I'm going to make sure all of that gets to you this month. And of course, I shouldn't forget also, happy Halloween, guys. I hope everybody enjoyed, for everyone that's in the States and that celebrated Halloween. Hope you had fun. Hope you and your children had lots of candy and good times or parties, whatever you guys did. So consider supporting us on Patreon. You can visit us on patreon.com/Theros7 International. The WhatsApp group is always highly recommended. It is an incredible experience. I promise you that. There's always somebody to chat with to talk about the club that we love, Olympiacos. Now, guys, some great stuff coming up for the Champions League. I know Costa is going to be doing a Champions League preview with Vasily Kostadopoulos from Nova Sports. So that should be a good one. That will be tomorrow. So obviously the episode will be in Greek. So for our Greek-based listeners. And of course, guys, after the fact, we always do subtitles. So if you listen to it after the show, if you don't understand Greek, we will put English subtitles into the show as well. So something to keep in mind. We have a PSV preview with Vasilis Kostadopoulos, incredible reporter from Nova Sports. Now, a couple little tidbits of news to talk about before we start chatting about the game. The U19 won again. They beat ARIS over the weekend. They will have their youth league matchup coming up against PSV, so a win against ARIS is very important. Petros Kolokotronis, who is one of the goal scorers, he also had a penalty that he missed as well. He scored off of a free kick, funny enough, but he's got 6 goal contributions on the season. So he was one of the highly touted youngsters that we had gotten that is playing for the U19s now. So good to see him again on the score sheet. Olympiacos' B team unfortunately lost. They went down early, 2-0. They were losing in the first half. And then 2 Valbuena set pieces put us back into equal territory. It was 2-2, and then unfortunately we couldn't convert the chances we had in the second half, and we fell 3-2 to Iliopoli. So a little unfortunate there. Bilal again on the score sheet, so he's having a great season there for the B team. There was also an interview that Valbuena did, and he talked about how Olympiacos was actually the only team he would ever consider playing for the B team for, playing in second division for, which I thought was really nice of him in that interview that he did talking about Olympiacos. So one final bit of information before we talk about the Olympiacos versus ARIS match. The Olympiacos women won the first ever home game for a women's team, or for Olympiacos women's team, historic win, and they won 10-0 again. First 2 games of the season, each game they won 10-0. 20 goals by our ladies, our lionesses, in 2 games. 20 goals. Naya Venyamin, the striker for our women, she has 8 goals in 2 games. Almost half of the goals scored are scored by her. An incredible, incredible striker that we have there. And this women's team is coming out of the blocks on fire. They're destroying the competition. I mean, we knew this team should get promoted, but I mean, the level that they are on above the competition right now in the 3rd division is unbelievable. Almost makes you wish we could just get right to the 1st division. But anyway, great for them, and I hope they just steamroll the competition all the way to a promotion. That would be absolutely incredible. So congratulations to the ladies there. And we really, I really am hoping it would be nice to see them win 10-0 for every game. I know it's not possible, but I want to see big wins, and I want to see the ladies get promoted 2 straight years in a row so that we can see them win and lift the first ever title for women's football for Olympiacos. That would be unbelievable. So some of you guys chime in with your comments. George Gadili, guys, we are going to talk about all of this stuff here. We are going to talk about everything related to the game. I will get into some PSV discussion as well. Lakis Gavalas, if ever you're the beacon of positivity, my friend, don't worry, guys. We're going to talk about PSV a little bit. I promise you that. We will have a little chat. We'll do a little bit of a preview there. But first, let's talk about the game. Let's talk about Olympiacos' 2-1 victory. Scary. We go up 2 goals, and we in the second half, after the first half, of course, was very frustrating. We had a very good chance from El Kabi that he missed, unfortunately. Big chance. And we also had we had a couple of other opportunities, but unfortunately not really much that materialized. Had control for most of the game. There were things that I didn't like necessarily about the press. I would have preferred at halftime to see a change. Mendilibar didn't make one. And in the end, he was, we can say, vindicated about it because we scored 2 goals before he made any changes. And then, of course, the red card comes. The red card came. We had to lock some things down. Unfortunately, our new center back, Gustavo Mancha, he had a start today, and he was fine up until that decision that he made. Some might call it a professional foul, last man, it was a sure goal. Maybe by drawing the penalty, he gets them to miss it. I don't know. I thought it was just unnecessary. I thought it was stupid. And, there was a series of mistakes that led to that point, a Rodinei defensive error in particular. But, Gustavo Mancha just absolutely just pulls the player, deserved penalty, red card also. There were questions. People had questions about the red card, asking me if it was a rule that if you're given a penalty, it can't be a red card. And I'm pretty sure that's not the rule in Europe. I know in the United States, it is a rule. You cannot concede both a penalty and a red card. That's a thing in the United States, in the MLS and in U.S. sports, U.S. Soccer here. That's definitely a rule here. I didn't think that was a rule in Europe. So he was the last man back, so it was a red card offense. He stopped a sure goal scoring opportunity, and it was a penalty. So that therein was the issue there. So then, of course, we go into 10 men. We have to play a little bit differently. But even with 10 men, there were times we were getting forward, and we looked much better than ARIS did. I guess that speaks to the level of competition in Greece. That speaks to ARIS's current level. And we were able to hold on to the lead. ARIS did end up, especially towards the end of the game, having some pretty scary opportunities. I mean, Kostas Solakis had to come in and make some pretty big saves. For everybody that was out there talking about how poor he's been playing and talking about maybe benching him for Paschalakis, still don't understand that, but that's a different story altogether. Solakis came up big with a couple of really big saves for us to keep us in the lead. Without those big saves, we probably draw level in this game and we drop points. So big game from Solakis in that respect. Very, very important saves from him. He's also one of the choices you can make for your Man of the Match award. If you're tuning in now, give us your vote for Man of the Match. You have 4 choices. So let us know what you think. We always do a Man of the Match coach's grade at the very end. Personally, I think I know who is going to be the Man of the Match, but I'm excited to see what you guys vote and what you guys decide here. So that was basically the abridged version of the game. And we can say what we want about certain players here and there. There were a lot of complaints people had about players like Christos Mouzakitis. Some people had complaints I saw about Mehdi Taremi, that he can't play the 10 in the pressing role against Ayub Al-Kabi. Bruno Nyamaichi didn't have a great game. In fact, he gave the ball away a handful of times. Mouzakitis, of course, did have a big giveaway against, that he gave to ARIS that led to a really scary scoring chance. Fortunately, it was stopped. I think Costinha was the one that got his body in front of that. So well done to Costinha, if I'm remembering correctly. So Costinha, I thought, had a pretty good game as well. So it's one of those. It's one of those games where, okay, the red card's the red card. It's very difficult in professional sports when you go a man down to gain something from it. We have better quality than ARIS does. That is clear. But there were problems before that. And if we talk about the goals that were scored, those were some incredible individual efforts. What led to the goal from Podence was part of that is Mehdi's tactics. He loves getting our wingers out wide. He loves getting our players into those spaces. And what Podence did to bring the ball forward and finish, incredible individual ability. We could attribute that to tactics because we know that that is a goal. Technically, the tactics of the team under Mendilibar is for us to press high, create the turnover in the final third, and create opportunities there. But we didn't do much of that in this match. In fact, in general, the press has not been super effective this season, or as effective in certain areas. The midfield in particular, we've talked in the past about the press trap, right? Mendilibar puts our two center mids, usually Santiago Heze or whoever's next to him, like Danny Garcia. The two center mids are supposed to play off each other, and the front line presses the back line, and they're supposed to force the ball central so that a player like Santiago Heze, in the case of Olympiacos, it's usually Santiago Heze, is intercepting the ball and then turning and recreating possession. So that's the situation with regards to how we approach these games. And it hasn't worked. In fact, we're seeing more from the front line in terms of turnovers. They're doing more than they were last season. They're doing more than the midfield is to recover the ball. The midfield is not doing as much, unfortunately. Whether it's Heze, whether it's Danny Garcia, whether it's Muzakitis, whether it's Scipioni, we're not doing as much as we were. If the front line is unable to dispossess or create pressure, it's the back line that usually ends up recovering the ball. And that's where we get a lot of these scary situations. Because the more the back line sees action, the more likely they are to, of course, have something happen against them. Danny Garcia likes to hover around the front of the defensive line, while whether it's Heze running around trying to cover passing lanes, whether it, or Christos Muzakitis, who isn't as good at covering the passing lanes, although he's pretty good one-on-one closing players down. These are the problems. And you saw again yesterday, there were times ARIS would get forward. It wasn't that many times, but when they would get forward, our midfield just could not stop them. It couldn't cover the passing lanes. Some people disagree with me, but I put most of the fault with Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia is never in the spaces he's supposed to be. And even when he should be in the spaces to help force the ball wide, he always seems to be in between spaces and just enough to where the other opponent can get the ball without him being able to stop it. And always draws dumb fouls, whether it's in transition or not. As much as people like to complain about Scipioni doing that, I excuse that from a younger player that I know needs to mature. I don't excuse that for a 36-year-old who should know better by now, who should be smarter. A professional foul, fine. That's okay. But sticking your leg out on a stupid foul like that when they're not in transition or in a threatening situation is really dumb, in my opinion. But that's besides the point. There were other issues that I had with this game. From Mendilibar's choices to the starting lineup to things that we saw going on in the game that weren't rectified at halftime. Now, again, you can say that Mendilibar was vindicated because we got the 2 goals. He probably figured, look, I saw enough pressure to know that we created enough to get something going and to score. So he kept the same players in. We eventually got 2 goals. Great individual efforts. The second goal in particular, the interplay between Podence and Taremi was lovely to watch. And then Taremi's finish was just superb. Taremi's unbelievable, guys. This guy is, I mean, fantastic. We heard that Taremi is on painkillers. At Inter Milan last season, he was on painkillers as well. So we've heard he's not at 100%. So if this is the case, and this guy's on painkillers and he's not at 100%, I just cannot wait to see what he's like when he's at 100%. Mehdi Taremi is our most efficient goal scorer. Actually, I think technically Roman Yaremchuk is, but Yaremchuk's played one game. But Mehdi Taremi, if we're talking about players that have played over 100 minutes, Taremi's our most efficient goal scorer. Goal contributor, I should say. 6 goals, an assist. He drew 2 penalties. Technically, he should have 2 assists, I believe, because he drew the direct penalty that Yazici ended up scoring in the cup. So Taremi's he's unbelievable. I mean, he should be getting more minutes. He's been more effective in many ways than Ayoub El-Kaabi. The only thing with El-Kaabi is El-Kaabi, of course, we all know what he does in the press. So that's a different story altogether. But this front line, guys, is fantastic. Taremi, Yaremchuk, El-Kaabi. El-Kaabi's scoring now. He's starting to find his scoring form more and more and more. But going back to the discussion, the things I didn't like with the formation. I am so sick and tired. Danny Garcia, yes, I could talk about this all season. I'm going to end up talking about it all season. People disagree with me. Some people think Danny Garcia is more useful than he actually is, even though I can't find any shred of data. No matter how much video and tape I watch, there's nothing that I can see that makes me believe that Danny Garcia should be more than a bench option on this team. But watching us constantly play Chiquinho as a winger, while we have wingers that can do the press role that are much more capable at the wing than he is unforgivable. Fadiga, Chiquinho's going up against Fadiga. That was the competition there. You have a competent winger there that can just run to the byline. Fadiga offered nothing. But you put Chiquinho there to press against him? And how did that work out? It didn't. These are the things that annoy the living daylights out of me. You have real wingers on your bench that are more useful than a lot of people tend to make them out to be. And you play Chiquinho there. A player that you definitely know we need for PSV, and a player that very recently came off the field for an injury, a muscular injury. And you want to run him into the ground against ARIS? Out of position? These are things that I really am not on board with, and things that I very much disagree with with what Mendilibar does in terms of his player choices. Not just Danny Garcia, but these types of decisions as well. Maybe Mendilibar doesn't trust his wingers. I understand that. But and I know a lot of fans are unhappy with Gabriel Strefezza. A lot of you don't like him. You know, it's the price tag, 5 million plus a 3 million bonus. It's a lot. You know what I mean? It's a lot for a winger. It's more than what we paid for Christopher Valde. But if you look at what Gabriel Strefezza offers, right? A lot of people see goals and assists. That's it. And yes, okay, great. He doesn't have a lot of goal contributions. But Gabriel Strefezza does more work for the team. For our front line, he has the most interceptions. He has the most interceptions of all of our people on the front line per 90. He covers more than double the distance Daniel Podence does per 90. Podence doesn't track back. Most people don't care about that. You guys care about the dribbles. Most people care about what he does getting goals and assists. But Strefezza does a lot of work off the ball. That's not done by a guy like Daniel Podence. Heaven forbid you say a bad word about Daniel Podence. Strefezza is one of our best crossers of the ball. That's what Mendilibar wants. But because the guy can't beat a player one-on-one, that's the situation. You know, I can't believe I'm listening to people write off a guy that's played. I don't even think Strefezza's played, 300 minutes? 350 minutes? I need to see at least 500 minutes of a player, 1,000 minutes for me to really have a strong opinion of him. So for somebody to see 100 minutes of a player and tell me he's a palto, it's nonsense. It's absolutely utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. But any one of those wingers would have probably been more effective going after Fadiga, who is playing as the fullback than Chiquinho. It's unbelievable to me. And we've seen this too much. We've seen him play Chiquinho on the wing so much. And sure, in certain contexts, it can be effective, right? When you're playing against a bigger opposition and you want that pressure there. And we know how good Chiquinho is in the press, especially we know how well he anticipates where the ball's going to go and why he's so threatening on the press. I mean, without him, our press in Europe is not existent. So we know that. But against ARIS that was playing low block all game, come on. I find this to be a little bit ridiculous. And if we approach PSV like we did ARIS, it is going to be bad, guys. It will be very bad. I am not feeling good about that PSV game if Mendilibar approaches ARIS. If Mendilibar approaches PSV the way he approached ARIS. I am scared. I really am. We're going to probably see Danny Garcia again against PSV after he played way too many minutes in this game. We're going to see him. We don't have Santiago Eze because Santiago Eze has the red. It wasn't what it's not going to get repealed. So we have no Santiago Eze. So you're going to see Danny Garcia and you're going to see him. You don't have a choice at that point. You're going to see him next to maybe Muzakitis, maybe Scipioni. That's what you're going to see. So it's going to be a scary situation if we cannot figure out what's going on with the press. This is our primary philosophy. This is how we create our offense. And of course, this is our defense right here. But the press is also how we manufacture opportunities. Mendilibar doesn't care as much about creativity in offense as you or I might. He cares all about the formation, the structure, and how the spaces are exploited in the press. That is exactly what he cares about. That is what he cares about. So you have to remember this when you're complaining about what this winger does here, what this winger does here. That's what Mendilibar wants. The only reason Podence is allowed to exist is because he's Podence. If it was any other player and he had the same type of ability Podence did, he probably would not see as much of the field as he does now. All of this needs to be remembered. And PSV is on fire, guys. It is a scary team. It is a scary team. They move the ball very well. I am very concerned about this week because, unfortunately, because we didn't get the win against Bafos in the first week, we have backed ourselves into a corner. If we don't get a win here, we probably don't make top 24. I've been super confident. I never expected points against Arsenal. I never expected points against Barcelona. I did expect points against Bafos. PSV, I thought, maybe a draw here would be nice. I never expected a win. But because we didn't get the points against Bafos, we have to make up for it. We need to get points here. And it sucks because this isn't a team that I thought that we would match well against. Scary stuff. And I'm not sure how optimistic. I am really not sure how optimistic I am about going into this match. But looking, there's a lot of comments that people have left here. So I'm going to touch on a little bit on all of this. George Gadili is one of the first comments talking about Taremi here. Taremi's supposedly not 100% scoring goals for fun. Do you think he should start against PSV? For the sake of the press, you have to start Ayoub El-Kabi. But if things aren't going to plan, Taremi has to be there because you're going to have to change it up. But I don't see, unfortunately, because of the press, how you can't start El-Kabi. But I hate how late Mendilibar makes a lot of these choices. So I really do believe that Ayoub El-Kabi will start to get the pressure rolling. But if at halftime we're not materializing anything and the press isn't working, man, Taremi has to come on. That's the first switch that you make. I think that's probably what Mendilibar will do in that respect. So I think that's going to be at the very least what Mendilibar is going to consider. Elias 12 GM. PSV's last Champions League game was 6-1 against Napoli. So this game scares me a lot more now than it did at the beginning of the season. They've also been doing well in the league, man. Don't forget that. Yeah, this is exactly and yeah, it was 6-2. But it's a scary situation, guys. I'm not feeling good about it. I mean, I haven't felt great about any game in Champions League, but I had a nightmare before Pafos that we would draw, or actually that we were going to lose, but we ended up drawing anyway. Nicolas, the Simiyis, our fabulous patron, thank you so much for tuning in, buddy. Adi, what does your heart and your mind say about PSV? Heart says we get a magical win. Mind says draw at best. That's the situation here. Alex 050, Luis Milla is the player that Mendy asked like crazy, has 6 assists this season. So Mendilibar did not specifically ask for this player. Our sources told us otherwise. Milla was presented as part of a short list of midfield options, and Milla was the one that Mendilibar picked first. The problem was Milla, the club wasn't willing to spend 5 million for him, and even so, that 5 million figure was not the asking price from Getafe. They wanted more. They wanted like 8 million for the guy. Sorry, you're not buying a midfielder for that much. It's just not happening. It's not happening at all. So, Elias asking about Gustavo Mancha. He said he was a mess yesterday. Guys, Mancha really, he had one bad mistake. It was the red card. Otherwise, I didn't think there was much wrong with him. The guy's barely played. He's barely played. He's not used to playing with these guys. He's young. There are some things that worried me a little bit. And, the red card, unfortunate was the red card, but did we already forget in the season we won the Conference League how many penalties that Panos Retsos gave up? Some of you wanted to ship Retsos off the season we won the Conference League. Some of you wanted him out of the club for the mistakes he was making. Come on. These are growing pains with a kid like Gustavo Mancha. I'm not worried. The things I was worried about with him, I didn't see yesterday. It was other issues, but again, I don't necessarily, I'm not going to say that Mancha's a Bartol or Mancha's is a horrible player just because of one games. So that's, unfortunately, I'm not there yet. Lakis Gavalas, how do you explain that they won more duels than us? Well, the red card. That's how I explain that. We were, I believe before the red card, it was like 55-45 in our favor. After the red card, it then overturned. So that's why they would end up winning more duels. And it was mainly aerial duels at that point, not defensive duels. Yes, I have it right here. So it was aerial duels that they started winning, not ground duels. GS here. I believe this is Greek Swede. I think we all know where the problem infield is. The conversation will drag on until the end of the year. I think I know where you're getting there. Sun 6165. Heze is a huge absence. I don't disagree there. Heze gets run into the ground for a reason. There's a reason every player's here. Danny's awful. I can't understand why he's playing. From Socrates_Nick. This is preaching to the choir, guys. All of you are preaching to the choir. Do a couple more comments before I start chatting a little bit more about PSV and other players that some of you guys wanted to talk about. From Scob2131, I believe this is Mike Scob. Hey, good afternoon. Our issues are straightforward this season. Someone like Kostulos is missing energy in general. Transfer-wise, I think we should have done better with an experienced center back. I definitely agree on the Kostulas point. We are missing somebody like that comes on with that fire, will fight for every ball. We are missing that. I agree with this 100%. And, I don't disagree with your second point either. My preference would have been going into Champions League. I would have wanted a veteran center back with Champions League experience. And I think that's initially what was signaled by the club, but I don't think those players, unfortunately, were A, within budget range, and 2, wanted to come to the club. A major issue this summer, guys, was that a lot of players did not want to come to Olympiacos. So there's been comments about players that people thought Mendilibar wanted, like Luis Milla. People have brought up Borja Sainz. I'm going to tell you, and we have it on very good authority from a source that was extremely close to this and to the decisions being made and to the players that were recommended and such. Mendilibar asked for one player this summer, Brian Hill. That is the only player that he outright asked for. The club went to Brian Hill. The club waited until even the end of the summer to keep negotiations open and filling the winger slot before they brought him in. Brian Hill did not want to come to Greece. I don't care what you say. If the player doesn't want to come, there's nothing you can do. It's Greece. It's the Greek league. Doesn't matter whether it's Champions League or not. We learned this summer that Champions League guaranteed does not really offer you that much more group of players. We are still looking at players whose careers are ready to take that next step, or players who kind of didn't do well in certain areas at the spotlight, maybe in England or Spain or wherever. And those are the players that we're looking at that we're able to get. Champions League is just an extra thing for them to say, yes, I want to come to Olympiacos. Unfortunately, having Champions League available does not outdo the stain of having to play in Greece. That's just the nature of it, guys. And I'm sorry to have to say that. I really am. Thank you, Teresa_me. Bravo, you guys are doing a great job. Thank you so much for the kind words. Hearing that gives us the energy to continue to do what we do here. So there's a lot more comments here that I'll get into. I'll try to answer as many of these as I can, guys. They're coming in faster than I can see them. So there was a comment here about money. Here it is. Socrates_Nick. Here we go. Instead of building on the Conference League, he pulled back and tried to outsource the youth league roster. He got 40 million from Kostulas plus 30 million from the UCL. Who did he bring? No one. We get questions and we talk about the finances all the time, but there's a couple of misnomers here. So first of all, we have not received 30 million from Champions League. That is the best estimate so far of what we will get based on the new payout structure. We will get approximately 30 million by the time it's all said and done. We have not received 30 million yet. And we will not have received 30 million by the time in the winter we have to turn in the next report for the books. Not how that works. Kostulas, we did not receive 40 million for Kostulas. We received this year, we will receive, I believe it's 10 million for Kostulas by the time the year's end. Because remember, Brighton is paying in installments. In the Carapapas interview, Carapapas told us we're going to get over 3 years the transfer fee, which means, assuming that it's 10, 10, 10, maybe you get front loaded the first 5 as a down payment. Maybe we get about 15 in the first year, but you're not going to see all of that money until the end. In the June statement, the June financial statement from the club lost close to 30 million. The club lost close to 30 million euros. Marinakis had to do a share capital increase after using the emergency funds to pay for the losses. And he did, I believe it was a share capital increase of about 19 million because we had reserve funds that were used to cover the losses. And I believe it was a 19 million AMK, which was what he put in. So we lost money again last year. So the club had about 70 million in revenue. So if we lost 30 million on 70 million in revenues, that means 100 million is break even. Selling Kostulas and Champions League money this year, assuming everything else is the same, takes us to that break even point. So the club's not profitable right now, no matter what you think. Now, if we sell another player, we cut expenses, you can be more profitable. But right now, it's not. Marinakis has dumped money. Over 100 million euros has been dumped in over the past 4 seasons. We've spent more money over the past 4 or 5 seasons than any club. The only club that spent more money than us last season was Panathinaikos. Look what happened to them. They got into financial trouble. We spent more money than anybody else this season. so far. Nobody spent more money than we did in the market. Even if you count PAOK Zafiris, PAOK has made profit every year, the last 5 years. If you're going to talk about money, we have to be realistic about what's getting spent here. This is the reality. This is the reality. These are the numbers. The mentality, you can complain all you want about it, but the limits are the limits. Look, there's no restriction for him to buy Botafogo with his own money. He can pay 200 million. He can't just drop 200 million in Olympiacos. That goes against PSR. Otherwise, Panathinaikos would not have gotten in trouble last season. If you believe that he can just drop 200 million for no reason, I don't know what else to tell you. Panathinaikos spent more money than they were supposed to last season. They initially had a 2 million euro fine. It was reduced to 500K. They sold 2 players this season for over 40 million. Their expenses are way less than we are. They have way lower wage bill than we do. That's why they're able to afford to pay Rafa Benitez almost 5 million for him and his team. What other players? How much money did they spend over the summer for players? They didn't spend much. They're about to spend 3 million in the winter after the reporting deadline for Tete and oh my goodness, Padelidis. I want to say his name. The other player. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. But you get my point. That's the situation here. These are the limits. And what the club has decided to do, instead of saving money and just buying one really good player, they decided that we would buy a bunch of scouted fines. And this is the situation. You know, this club is not going to spend more than 5-6 million for a player. It's just not happening. My preference would be that the club not buy so many players and try to buy, especially we had way less contracts to worry about. My preference personally would have been, hey, let's pay for one really good player and then let's fill the gaps with academy kids. That's my preference. It's not the approach of the club. They wanted to find a bunch of different players, talents, young talents, to continue to build also for the future, which is a good idea. And they also spent money this year. Guys, don't forget, the club spent serious money buying academy talents for the U19. Colocotroni, Glafku, the 2 kids from Asteras. Guys, Eric Hamza. They spent money to get these guys. They've spent money to build the network and fill gaps for the B team. They brought in, remember, we brought back Siovas, we brought back Valbuena, we brought Bilal. We were filling gaps to complete the pipeline so that we can build. The work's just beginning there. But these are investments that need to be made. So I understand how frustrated some of you are. I understand people want that big BAM signing. I know you want, for Champions League, you wanted to see more. I get it. So did I. I'm not disagreeing. I wanted more too. But I think what a lot of you underestimate is that what you want in a player is not necessarily what Mendilibar wants in a player. The winger discussion we can have for hours on end. Everybody wants a winger that dribbles, one-on-one, whatever. Mendilibar doesn't want that. Mendilibar this summer wanted a left-footed left winger, a right-footed right winger. Why does he want that? I brought this up how many shows now? Why does he want a left-footed left winger and a right-footed right winger? Because he wants them to go to the byline and cross. That's it. Mendilibar, whatever creative players you have, he ends up destroying them, so to speak. I don't mean like he kills their careers. I mean that in his system, their creativity gets destroyed unless they're going to disagree and not do what he wants them to do. That's the situation. And the hard part is, like, there's not much of what Mendilibar wants that's in our price range. Brian Hill, left-footed left winger, didn't want to come to Olympiacos. Cancellieri is one that we wanted. Mendilibar didn't want him because he's too slow. He's actually not playing half bad over at Lazio right now. Santino Adino was another one that he wanted. But again, ended up being very expensive. Was those deals with Argentinian sides are just very difficult in general. Was not coming over the line. But there's not a lot of left-footed left wingers that are available for us to get. That's the sad reality. So that's the situation, guys. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to do that. And at the same time, we have an expectation that we want to see these youngsters get promoted. Muzakitis should be playing. He's one of our top prospects. I mean, he's right now the front runner for the Golden Boy. I expect there will be movement in the winter for for some of these positions. But the fact of the matter is, regardless of what complaints you have about the squad, in Greece, we have the deepest squad, period. Regardless what your opinion is about the level of Strefezza, Diogo Nascimento, about Mancha, it doesn't matter. We have the deepest squad in Greece, period. We should win this league one way or another. We beat ARIS, not necessarily because the tactics were correct, but because we had better players. Period. Period. That's it. We have the best squad. We will win the league because we have the best squad. Period. PAOK has been up and down to start the season so far. They're on a good streak right now. Most likely, like it did last season and like it did with Panathinaikos, it will come back. They will drop back down again. We just have to keep up with that. That's what the data says. It is absolutely what the data says. Question here from Combat Aries. Adi, honestly, do you believe that Muzakitis is not playing because of Mehdi? No, that is the truth. Our sources have told us so. Mendilibar is conservative, and Muzakitis doesn't do the pressing aspect as well as other players. It doesn't. Danny Garcia has other qualities that Mendilibar wants, and it's also his guy. Danny Garcia was the first player Mendy asked for the season after the Conference League, but it is Mendilibar preventing Muzakitis from getting more playing time. It is him, 100%. I'm sorry. The 3 through passes that Muzakitis gave against ARIS yesterday were enough to tell me even at his worst, he's better than any other center mid option we have. But when you are the coach and your primary concern is how things work on the press and on the defensive end, maybe you don't value that contribution. Maybe you don't value that contribution. And that's probably the case. That's how Mendilibar thinks. He doesn't think about the creative aspect first. It is an afterthought. That's his style. And if these are things that I disagree with, because they have created a level of inconsistency. If he's getting results, if he's getting the results in general, then you excuse it. But when you're struggling and you're not seeing the results that you expect to see, then you start to ask questions. But in particular, with a player like Muzakitis, I find the whole thing to be unacceptable, especially with relation to Danny Garcia. You will never prove to me that Danny Garcia does what anybody thinks he does. He doesn't occupy the spaces correctly. I rewatch every game twice. I take captures of the spaces that he occupies. He is a vocal person on the field. He is a very aggressive person. And before we brought in Muzakitis, Danny Garcia was the only real quote unquote 6 that we had. So that's the situation there. And I will never agree that Danny Garcia should be a starter on its team. Danny Garcia is a veteran sub that we need to have for various reasons, but he should never be a midfielder with the most minutes. Ever. 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 I'm sorry. It's not possible. to have the person who's the front runner to win the Golden Boy Award, the most creative deep midfielder you have on the team, rotting on the bench over that? Even at Muzakitis' worst, which what we saw yesterday was not great, he's better than what else we have in the midfield position, and I will die on that hill. I'll say that absolutely 100%. My biggest fear at the moment, and the warning bells aren't like going full. This is just like a worry that I have in general, is that I'm beginning to worry that Mendilibar is beginning the path of the Pedro Martins decline. You guys remember that, right? Third season of Pedro Martins. The football was not great. We were in Champions League. We weren't really getting results. We were fortunate to have Europa League after, we didn't get any results besides the first game against Marseille. But the football we were playing was terrible. The more Pedro Martins had control over transfers, the less that the less positive football we were playing. It was becoming horrible. Now, we were walking the league because we still had better players, and the rest of the league at the time was just not there. I think Balk was the only team at the time that had anything else to offer. And then, of course, later on, it would be after Pedro Martin leaves, it would be Ike as well. But the situation was not good, and I worry that we're starting to see the beginning of that with the stubbornness. Now, last season, remember, we experienced the same exact thing. Well, not exact, but we experienced similar issues in the beginning of the season, and then Mendilibar changed things up with Kostulas and Muzakitis first, introducing them more frequently into the lineup. That was a big source of the change. And he also changed the midfield as well, because remember, it was Danny Garcia. We were seeing Danny Garcia Jose the whole time, and we were having the same complaints. But once he changed things up, and then, man, we were flying second half of the season outside of the Bodo Glimt game. And I'm not saying this because I want to come off as, I hate Mendilibar, he's got to go. That's besides the point. I would never, at this point in the season, fire Mendilibar. The guy, first of all, what he's done, the guy's probably the best coach that we've ever had, just in the accomplishments, right? The Conference League brought us back after that really bad period we had post Pedro Martins. So I would never ask for him to be fired right now. Beyond the guy deserves to be done and see out his term. And leave on his terms. If he wants to leave this summer, he leaves. That's it. But under no circumstance do I think Mendilibar right now should be fired. And that's probably because I don't necessarily believe it's his tactical philosophy that's the problem right now. I think it's his stubbornness with player choices. You guys saw that we can play football. The game against Volos, you can play football in Greece. You don't have to be two defensive midfielders against a low block in Greece. You don't. We can play football under his tactics with the right players. He just has to be the one that picks those players. Keeping Yusuf Yazici off of the UEFA list over Diogo and substituting for Diogo Nascimento is unacceptable. I'm sorry. I think Diogo Nascimento is an extremely talented player and that he will have a future at this club, but he should never have been included on this list. So all of these things can exist together simultaneously. There's no mutual exclusivity. It's not either Mendilibar's a shit coach, shit tactics, and should be fired, or he's a legend. You can't say a single bad thing about him. You can say this guy is the best coach we've ever had, but as he continues in his career here, things are beginning to level off, and it seems like his stubbornness is leading to a decline. It's the natural cycle of things. We don't have coaches here more than 3 to 4 years. It is a natural cycle. A natural cycle. So that's that. It's just the way it is. Now, could Mendilibar turn it around like he did last season, and then we end up flying and win the double again? Yeah, of course he can. We have to wait and see what happens. But for the moment, things are not looking great. I would say a lot of people have been disappointed where we are so far, namely with the Champions League performances and how we looked against PAOK. I think had we won against Bafos, had we drawn against PAOK and not gotten beaten so bad, I don't think this would be the same conversation. But unfortunately, we didn't get the points. And now here we are. Couple more comments here. I've really been talking about this a long time, so I'm sorry, guys, for the for the little bit of rants that have been going on talking about the comments. But I do like to engage you, and I do like to see what everybody is saying, and give you guys a chance to air your grievances, give your opinions. Don't forget also to vote for your man of the match poll. A bunch of you have, so we have a lot of votes so far, but for those of you that haven't, go ahead, give your vote so that we can see what it is the man of the match will be. So another comment here from Socrates _ let me ask you, Adi, I also want to thank you for being thorough and arguing with rational points. Thank you, Socrates, for that. Sevilla wanted Doi, and we rejected a 4 million proposal. How are we expecting this? So my sources, and I had two sources that both gave me the exact same information, was that there was not a proposal for Doi, no official proposal for 4 million. I never was able to confirm that existed. So I can't really comment. If we did say no to 4 million for Doi, I would say that's disappointing because I don't think he has at least while Mehdi is here, he doesn't have a future at this club. I like what he's doing at Rio Ave, playing as a midfielder. I think he would be a great 6 for us. But with Mehdi here, I don't think he will ever see a future here. So there's a couple other comments I'll get to here. Garambarium. I love that name. Musa has to be more fast on some things that he's doing on the pitch. Champions League is much faster than Europa League or the Greek League, and Musa is my favorite player. Yes, no, he does have things he has to improve on, especially, you're right, in the speed with which he makes some of his decisions. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of that comes with experience. He has to play those games in order to get that. And he's a good enough player to make that adaptation during the game. At the same time, he's also the only deep central midfielder that we have that will make those long through passes to cut the line. You saw when we didn't do that in Champions League, haven't done it until now. He is one of the only midfielders we have that makes those looks and has the ability to make those passes. He did it 3 times against ARIS. 3 times. Nobody else did. So as far as I'm concerned, there's this weird dilemma, the unstoppable force, immovable object, if you will, that everybody always gets to, this double-edged sword. We want players to get experience, our young players, right? We want them to have the experience. We want them to get that experience and play with this certain level of experience that we expect for the emblem. But we don't have the patience to give them that experience. Mouzakitis will not pick his play up at a Champions League level, quote unquote, if he's not allowed to play in Champions League. So you see what I mean? It's a double-edged sword there. And quite frankly, even at his worst, I still would rather have Mouzakitis there than have to suffer through Danny Garcia as a starter every single game. And I have no personal vendetta against Danny Garcia. In fact, if we're talking ability, if we're talking his vocal capabilities, his leadership capabilities, I think he's a player, a veteran presence that's needed as a sub on the bench. My only issue with this Danny Garcia situation is not that I don't think he's useful for the team as a whole. It's that I don't think he should be a starter. This is where I stand on Danny Garcia. I do not believe this man should be a starter. And even so, if that's the case and Mendilibar says, no, he has to be a starter, fine. But you cannot have Santiago Jose and Danny Garcia next to each other. It doesn't work anymore. It does not. The effectiveness is down from last season. And this season, it's not effective anymore. It's not effective against the low block, and it has not been super effective in Europe. Not for consistent periods of time. This is the point that I am making, in case anybody had any other misunderstandings on this. GS, we need a creative center attacking mid. Yazici offers that to some aspect, and Taremi offers some similar as a second striker behind El Kabi. There's no coincidence. We look more threatening when they play. Yes, I look, as on a personal note, I agree with that. However, the number 10 for Mendilibar does not serve that purpose. In general, the number 10, we talked about this before, that position is dying. The number 10 position is dying. The ones that we all grew up to love, the guys like Carapialis, the Per Zetterbergs, right? The Zidans. Oh my God, the players that we loved at this club that we saw. Cosas Fortunis is probably the last real number 10 that this club will see, if that makes sense. That Mendilibar does not use the 10 in a creative situation. Chiquinho is probably the most perfect idea of a 10 Mendilibar will get, because he's technical. We've seen what he can do with the ball at his feet. He presses insanely well, and he has the mind for it. Remember, guys, we brought in Chiquinho as an 8. It's a box-to-box number 8. You know who else is a box-to-box number 8? Diogo Nascimento, but that's neither here nor there. Chiquinho is the perfect 10 for Mendilibar's system. It's why when he's not there, we see the press completely fall apart. I think Yazici needs to be used more in the Greek games, especially, than Mendilibar uses him for. But unfortunately, that's not at all how Mendilibar sees it. Yazici was not a Mendilibar choice, and neither was Remy Cabella. Remy Cabella was a great opportunity, a veteran with Champions League experience that we brought in to help. Mendilibar does not see that either one of them is needed for Champions League. It is what it is. Saki is here. Am I the only one that thinks the press is not as efficient like last year's? I actually just talked about that. It's not, unfortunately. It's not. Socrates again, we need an 8, not a 10. Horta was a very good choice with his good crosses, nice passing and shooting, but I heard Mendy didn't like him, and ownership considered him unresellable. I don't know about the unresellable part. That could have been one aspect to it, but I know Mendilibar didn't want him. My sources told me as much. 2 different ones. We liked Horta. I liked Horta for how I thought he bridged the gap between the midfield and the offensive lines. I thought he was a great piece to have. Something that I see Diogo Nascimento can do as well. But Mendilibar wasn't a big fan. He wasn't a big fan as well. Mike Scott asking about data for the press. We think it isn't working well. Probably we were right, but we need data to support this. So here are the data points, the relevant data points that have proved to me, at the very least, that the press is less effective than it was last season. First is in the overall number of interceptions when we're talking about the press and how we apply pressure in the front third. So some things that we measure, which we measured the last season and a half when Mendilibar was here, was the number of opportunities we create off of turnovers in the opponent's third. We have created significantly less opportunities off of turnovers, not just in the final third, but in the midfield third as well. We have a larger number of recoveries from our defensive line. Guys like Santiago Eze and Danny Garcia are seeing markedly less, possession adjusted, of course, ball recoveries per 90 minutes than they did last season. Even when we were complaining in the beginning of last season, Santiago Eze and Danny Garcia are seeing less. So here's the situation. We are making less attack opportunities from the press than we did. The midfield in the press trap, which is where some of our best opportunities were generated from, are not recovering the ball as much as they did. In fact, we're recovering the ball more in front and behind them. Neither one is what we wanted. Neither one. So it's in that's why we say the press isn't working, because it is less effective. The KPIs, the key performance indicators that indicate whether or not the press is working are not being matched to where they were before. That's why we say that. So and that's the situation, at least for for this. So, Comrade Aries, why the fuck do we have 9 midfielders for the central 2 to 3 positions? Is this also Mendilibar's fault? This is something that we talk about a lot in the WhatsApp chat. I, for one, would have preferred that we signed one less midfielder, aka Diogo Nascimento, and had a bigger budget for another winger. That would have been my preference. So it came down to a couple of things. So Diogo Nascimento was a player that we had been following for some time, and the club was looking for this summer a defensive mid because there was an expectation that we would sell Santiago Eze. There were offers that came in for him, and they were expecting perhaps a sale for Santiago Eze. So Scipione was brought in as the replacement for Santiago Eze. But we were still looking for a midfielder, a center midfielder in a number 8. Luis Milla was one that we were looking for, of course. But then we couldn't get him, and they still wanted another player, a project player that we could have that could do something in Greece for us, and we could call on. That was Diogo Nascimento. I am not necessarily against them buying Diogo Nascimento. What I was against was Mendilibar including him in the UEFA list. That, I think, is the mistake. The scouting department wanted one more winger. They wanted to bring in one more winger before the window closed, and we did not. Santino Adino, the wingers that we were looking at were Santino Adino, Cancellieri, and there was one more. I don't think Dennis Mann was early, but there was one more I'm thinking of that I can't remember. But the scouting department did want to bring in one more winger, even when we brought Daniel Podence. But remember, guys, Daniel Podence is expensive. We didn't get him for nothing. We're paying a loan fee, and his wage is not big. Or, I mean, his wage is huge. They're not subsidizing a big part of his wage. He has a massive wage, huge. So it's a big hit as far as the squad ratio is concerned, because remember, 70%, we can only spend 70% of total revenues on wages. And that includes your amortized, cost of transfer fees. So that's the situation. Somebody asked about the Rangers winger, Czerny. He did not want to come. Václav Czerny, he didn't want to come to Greece. That was why he was never somebody that we could get, because he didn't want to come. He didn't want to come at all. So Comrade Aries, too long didn't read. So the ownership messed up transfers again, and your sources blame Mendilibar for struggling to manage the mess. You don't think Mendilibar had a choice for these transfers? Is that what you're asking? Remy Cabella was the only one that I'm aware of that he probably didn't pick. But all of these other transfers were part of short lists that he prioritizes who he wants. Mendilibar is involved in every step of the transfer. That's why it was so difficult. It's not easy to find a left-footed left winger. Brian Hill was his choice. Didn't want to come to Greece. Cancellieri was one that we thought we could afford. We couldn't get. Santino Adino was another player that matched the profile that we thought we could get, but ended up being expensive. Mendilibar has final approval on all of these. All of them. There were dozens upon dozens of wingers presented to him that he said no to. Dozens. If you believe Mendilibar had no choice in these transfers, then I don't know what else to tell you. Mendilibar had say on every single one of them, except, from what I've been told, Remy Cabella. Mendilibar has a choice for all of them. You think the type of person that Mendilibar is, if he didn't want the player, that he would say, "Oh, okay." He doesn't rate Cabella. He didn't put him on the list. He doesn't play him that much. Same with Yazici, even though we like him. Quite frankly, most of the transfers were, the transfers that were made, I don't have a lot of issues with. Mehdi Taremi is a very good transfer. I don't see an issue there. As much as everybody complains about Strefezza does what Mendilibar wants. He's played 300 minutes. What do you want? Mendilibar didn't choose to make Ostulas and Muzakiti starters. There was pressure on him to play them. Now, if you want to talk about the mistakes that were made from last year's summer transfers, that's a different story. We would have an agreement, especially in the later transfers that came in, about what did and did not happen. Yes, there were a lot of mistakes that made, especially towards the end of that transfer window, with regards to Willian, Sergio Oliveira. Plenty of them were not, great transfers. But the use of Muzakitis and Costulas came from pressure to use them, not necessarily because Mendilibar played them out of the kindness of his heart. That's another misnomer, unfortunately. So the situation with regards to the transfers, nobody's 100% in the right here. Let's be honest, right? Not all transfers will work out. And Mendilibar will have phases in the season where he's not going to do well. Right now, there's questionable choices. We know the strategy of the club when it comes to transfers. The strategy is they present the manager the manager gives profiles. The club has to find players that fit in those profiles. They give a short list and the coach picks. Okay, I like this player. This one first, second, third, fourth, and he has to prioritize them. And the club gets who they can get. That's how it works. That is how it works. That's what we were told. And then that's how things happen. And then, of course, information changes. What we were told with respect to certain players, information comes out and it changes what we were told. The more we do this, the more information we get and the more things change. That's why this is the situation with respect to these transfers. I can agree, if we look in retrospect, I can agree that last summer some things weren't handled correctly with some players, right? Some transfers, let's put it that way. But with the players that we have now, the players that were made, the transfers that we brought in, a lot of them were longer term options than maybe we were comfortable with. Maybe it was better that we had gotten more veteran options. I don't know. But it's also a long season and the season's not over yet. When it all is said and done, we'll get to really review and then see how things turn out. Still early. Mehdi can still change things and he can do what he did last season and turn the season around and we start flying. All of this stuff can happen. Comrade Aries, if there's something I said in the past that doesn't add up, let me know. But my opinions on things can change. I might have thought a player was great. I might think he's not great now. But let me know what opinion that you think I changed on that you disagree with. A couple more comments here, guys. I'm already over an hour, and let me tell you, it is tiring. It is tiring to do this by yourself. But anyway, give me a couple more comments, guys. I'll touch on a few more things, and then we'll quickly do man of the match and coach's grade. Mike Scob here. We need to start trusting Akas's plan, or why do we have him? Question risen with me. Does Edu even care about us? Is he involved? I think not. Edu, guys, is not really involved. He's involved in some things. Like he got involved in the Scipione transfer, and I believe he got involved in the Gustavo Mancha transfer, but that's it. There's no grand plan. His focus is primarily Nottingham Forest and then whatever's going on in Brazil. Christos Akas is a transfer advisor. He does have involvement. I'm not I don't know. I don't necessarily know what exactly. I know his role is involved in establishing the scouting network. He has a lot of those relationships, but we also have a data analytics aspect of it that of course he works with. So I know a little bit about the various inputs and the infrastructure. I just don't know the extent of Akas's direction. Let's put it that way. But Akas is involved, and he has a very expansive network, and he's been very successful, not just with PAOK, but even in the Netherlands, where he was before. Saki's here. Why so much money for a 28-year-old Brazilian player? So 5 million is the amount of cash that we spent. 3 million is bonus. So unfortunately, that's the wing position, man. Wingers are expensive. It is. You know, look at all the other players. Dennis Mann that we were linked with, 8.5 million. And that wasn't with bonuses. That was just cash. That's the winger position is probably the most expensive, unfortunately. So, and Gabriel Strafetza is a player that he was part of the scouting. We had been continually following him for about 3 years. So this is, that's at least the situation, with respect to Strafetza. Arispan, we need to learn how to sell our mid-tier assets. Why did we reject an offer for Gelson? You know, first, I never confirmed that there was an offer I never had got confirmation that there was an offer for Gelson. And that Gelson's tough, man, because he's so useful. And I don't know how much money you're going to get with his injury history. I'll be honest with you. That's tough. But yeah, in retrospect, it seems like we should have sold him. He's been injured so long. 9 players for 2 to 3 positions is not a transfer success. If it is what ownership has been doing since the Stone Age. Look, I don't disagree here. And again, I have been of the opinion that we probably brought too many. I would have preferred one less center mid signing and one more wing signing, or a bigger winger signing, if that makes sense, like a higher salary, better. That would have been my preference, but I don't necessarily disagree with that. Arispan Ortega is not. There must have been a comment about Repchuk here. Ortega is not worse than Repchuk, and he's better than any other name that has been brought up as an option. Ortega this season, guys, has been better than he has since joining. So he's had issues, but this has been one of his better seasons with the Olympiacos so far this season. He's been one of our more consistent players. So anyway, guys, about an hour and 13 minutes here. Try to get to as many comments as I could. So we're going to wrap things up here. We're going to do man of the match and coach's grade. We're going to talk a little bit about that. For me, the man of the match is going to be Daniel Podence, goal and an assist. You know, despite the fact that I did bring up that he doesn't track back as well, the guy definitely, I mean, he was involved in both goals. Plain as that, plain as simple. You know, there's other shouts for it. I know some people thought Taremi would be man of the match. You could say Tsolakis, because without Tsolakis, we drop points for sure. So that's an option. You know, that all of those three, I think, are good shouts for man of the match. But for me, it's hard for me to say that Daniel Podence, you know, the goal and the assist puts us up, and then the red card happens, and because of that lead, we were able to hold on to the 3 points. So for me, he was man of the match. Looking at what you guys said, looks like you guys agree. 60% of you voted for Daniel Podence. It's Daniel Podence is. It's hard when you have a goal and assist, 2 goal contributions. It's so hard for you to say that he doesn't deserve man of the match. Coach's grade for Mehdi Libat, I think, despite maybe what my opinions were, the lineup, we ended up 2-0. So the red card changes things. That's not Mehdi Libat's fault, unless you blame him for the choice of playing Mancha. But, you know, we want to see some rotation here and there. I think Mancha is going to be a good option for us moving forward. I like what he does with the ball at his feet, even if defensively he's, you know, of course, not nearly as good as Pirola. But, you know, we held on to the lead. Tsolakis had a lot of great saves. So I would have liked to see some changes earlier by Mehdi Libat. I still don't like the Chiquinho, how he used Chiquinho, but I'll give him, we got the result still in the end. Mehdi Libat gets a B for me in for this. So We'll see what happens in PSV. Guys, I've already told you I'm not feeling super good about it. Costa's going to talk to Vasilis Kostadopoulos about the game and what's going on there. He's the reporter from Nova Sports. So we're going to see what happens. And, obviously have hope. I think that Mendilibar will turn this around eventually. I really do hope it happens before we completely lose out on Champions League and knockout stage. I really hope he finds the formula like he did last season to get things moving and so this team can play the football we know it can and to get the results that we need. At this point, I'm not one of those people anymore that cares about, we have to play champagne football. This is Mendilibar. We know what we get. We know what exactly the play style is, and I just want to make sure we're winning. Personally, that's what I care about. So, guys, for those of you that are still here over an hour and 15 minutes later, like and subscribe. Help us continue to grow the red and white community. Look out for Costa's video tomorrow as he talks with Vasilis Kostadopoulos. And we, of course, will see you guys all later in the week. A lot of great stuff coming out. Follow socials for giveaways. Follow socials for all the great content. More data will come out as well. Because there's been so much about Gabriel Strefezza, we're going to do a little bit about him, dive into the data, really see what it is that he's doing well, what he's not doing well, why people don't like the player and the signing. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to see if the rush to judgment is everything it should be. So thank you guys all for tuning in. I'm Adi. This is Thedros International, by the fans, for the fans, and we'll see you all next time. And if you guys want to keep the conversation going, DM me on socials. I'm happy to keep talking about things. I'm happy to keep sharing ideas. Thank you all for giving me some comments, giving me some stuff to talk about, go back and forth because, man, it's tough to talk here for an hour. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Good luck to Olympiacos for PSV, and let's hope for a win. Let's hope Mendilibar can pull out some of that old Mendilibar magic that he's known for doing. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.